There are astronauts, and there are ufonauts.
Warning: the following material may not be suitable for all audiences. Please listen responsibly.
My guest tonight has written an amazing book, Flying Saucers Over the White House. We're talking about Colin Bennett, the inside story of Captain Edward. Is it Ruppelt, Colin?
Ruppelt. It's Ruppelt, yes.
Ruppelt. His
yes,
official his official U.S. Air Force investigation of UFOs. Basically, from what I'm gathering in this book, first of all, welcome to the program, Colin.
Yeah, glad to be here. Good evening, America.
Yeah, and you join us from London this morning, early in the morning, correct?
No, it's late afternoon here.
Perfect. Okay, so we didn't wake you up or anything.
No.
Okay, fantastic. So basically, this is a book that you decided to write. You've been a writer. You've been a playwright. You've studied at Oxford. And then how did you get involved in this Captain Edward Ruppelt story? How did you learn about it in the first place?
Well, I'm the author of the biography, I should say, of Charles Fort. I'm sorry. Put that on the editing floor, please.
Take your time.
I'll start again. I am the author of the biography of Charles Fort, who was the great American chronicler of extraordinary events, anomalies, or contradictions in experience and description. And as such, the UFO falls into the category of an anomaly, which we don't understand it. That is, it's strange to our experience. And it was the kind of thing that Charles Fort wrote about in his books. And he died in 1933, but he's becoming increasingly popular as the a chronicler, if you like, of strange events. Okay. So I was already interested in the UFO, being the biographer of Charles Fort. My book, the biography, is called Politics of the Imagination. And so I became interested in this very odd, almost forgotten slice of American military history. Captain Ruppelt was initially a captain on Tinian Island in the Pacific during the war. And he was a very clever guy, great technician, and he was a bombardier navigator for, I think it was 509 Squadron, who had B-29s. On Tinian Island, the B-29s squadrons were all gathered for the assault on Japan. And they were responsible, and it's a terrible thing to talk about, but this is history, for they were responsible for the fire raids on Tokyo in an effort to try and persuade the Japanese to surrender. When the Japanese didn't surrender, it was decided that to use the two nuclear weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the world knows the rest of it.
Correct.
If there had been an accident or the flu or something or other, Ruppelt might well have been in the bomb aimer's position of Enola Gay, being a bombardier. And so he was involved with history by a hair's breadth. If someone had slipped and broken their ankle, he might well have seen Hiroshima in the crosshairs of his Norden bomb site, which is as near history as most people want to get.
Understood. So how does this get into how flying saucers get over the White House? Because I'm sure a bunch of people are going, how did that happen? How did I miss that part of history?
I'm just giving you a gloss on Captain Ruppelt and who he was there, historically.
Yes. The 509th, as we speak about it here, to remind everyone, is also just coinky-dinky, the same bomber group that Jesse Marcel came out of, which was responsible for supposedly collecting the Roswell wreckage.
Yes, indeed, yes.
In there.
1945 came, and 509 Squadron and Ruppelt parted company. Right, as we know, 509 Squadron went to Roswell, where they trained for the atomic tests in the Pacific, in the Bikini Atoll. They were given brand new factory fresh B-29s, new equipment, and waited for the issue of the nuclear bombs from the newly constructed production lines. They had to wait a long time for nuclear bombs, because the first two nuclear bombs were definitely home brew affairs.
Sure.
And you had to standardize and miniaturize all kinds of things. Okay, so there's 509 Squadron. By the way, 509 Squadron is said by enthusiasts to be the lead bomber squadron in the United States Air Force, and it flies the B-2 Spirit.
Absolutely, which is why it was so ironic that people tried to rip apart their credibility as not being able to tell the difference, obviously, between weather balloons and extraterrestrial spacecraft.
Oh, yeah. So, once more, Ruppelt was symbolically connected. It was starting to get symbolically connected with the UFO, because the Roswell story is a symbolic, at least, connection, even though he wasn't there. He probably knew all the pilots at Roswell from wartime experience. Ruppelt himself went into civilian life and became an aircraft technical engineer. I think it was with Boeing. He was very happy doing that when along came history again, the Korean War. And Ruppelt became an enlisted captain with the ATIC, Air Technical Intelligence Command, at Dayton, Ohio, at Wright-Patterson Air Force, I believe, Wright-Patterson Air Base.
The ominous Wright-Pat, gotcha.
Yes, Wright-Pat, yeah. And that was a technical center. In those days, I mean, it still is the technical center. In those days, it was the Area 51 of its time.
Indeed.
And undertook the most advanced technical operations concerning equipment and aircraft and everything to do with aircraft, military aircraft, that is. And the head of the ATIC at that time was Colonel Rosengarten. And he saw in Ruppelt a very, very bright guy. And at this time, during the Korean War, we're talking about 52 now, 1952, the American Air Force flying F-86 Sabres had a hell of a job with the MiG-15, the Russian MiG-15. And they captured, a damaged sample of the MiG-15 had been taken from Korea to Wright-Patterson.
Okay.
And the Rosengarten gave Ruppelt the job of taking apart this MiG-15.
So he did back engineering. Gotcha.
Yeah, back engineering. Yeah, because it was beating shit. I'm sorry. It was beating hell out of the F-86 Sabre, which was a very pretty aircraft, but it had to have a damn good pilot to tackle the MiG. The MiG was a Russian surprise, a big Russian surprise, and very worrying. It was as big a surprise to the Sabre fighter pilots as the T-34 tank was to the Germans in 1943. They didn't think the Russians could make such a thing. Sure. Aluminium engine, sloping armor, and whose suspension was a famous American engineer. I'll remember it in a minute. And good suspension, and it knocked the Germans for 6. They did recover, but for 6 months the T-34 ran the battlefield.
It still is pretty amazing if you think about the technology at the time, especially in aeronautics, that was going on in Europe and in Asia compared to the U.S., how we were still able to defeat both the Germans and win the war. Still blows my mind how that was even possible.
Yes, it does blow your mind, yeah. And it led to the assumption that never underestimate the Russians. they produced this, they produced this prototype, which was an ugly sort of an aeroplane. It looked as if it had been assembled by some peasants in a field. The Sabre was a glamorous, the Sabre F-86 was a glamorous aeroplane, but the Russian ugly mug beat it. It had cannon, It's the essential thing.
Yeah, well, that's what the Russians are always known for, sort of ugly yet highly functional and sturdy, right?
Oh,
just like if you want to go to the International Space Station right now, I'd go on their rocket instead of the Columbia or whatever piece of junk we're flying these days. Thank God we retired it finally.
Uncle Sam is blushing,
Yeah, exactly. Too many cooks in the kitchen, my friend.
Yeah, that's right. I've heard, right. Okay, and the four cannon of the MiG was 14 mil, I think, and if one of them clipped you, you'd had it. You exploded. Whereas the F-86 still had World War II machine guns, and it was no match for the MiG. Okay, so there we are. And Ruppelt is taking the MiG apart. Okay, Ruppelt is at his desk one day at Wright-Patterson, and he notices a group of young officers, enlisted men, really, who were notorious for not giving a toss about the military life or military projects. And they were laughing at a certain project they'd been given. And always laughing. Rupert would go to his desk and do the MiG statistic, and he'd see this group giggling and laughing in a supercilious way. Well, Ruppelt made inquiries and found that this group of rather silly young officers were laughing at, guess what, the UFO. They'd been given the UFO project, and they regarded it as a Walt Disney hoot. Anyway, Ruppelt, this made an impression on Ruppelt, and this was probably the first time he'd heard the phrase UFO. And I don't know quite how he did it, but Colonel Rosengarten decided to sack this group of silly officers and put Ruppelt in charge of the UFO project. Now here's again Ruppelt involved with big history. Can't help it.
Now, was this public yet or no?
No, it was a secret project.
Okay.
Blue Book. It was called Operation Blue Book.
So this was the origins of Blue Book.
It was a secret project at the time.
Because Blue Book was obviously made public at some point. So.
Yes, much later. Yeah, much later. When Ruppelt left, at the time Ruppelt left Blue Book a year later, it was taken over by a time-serving guy called Hector Quintilla, and from then on it deteriorated. Then on it became put down by the Air Force.
Okay, but the origins of Blue Book, which you're about to describe, had more of a silly connotation to it as far as from the inside?
Yes. The United States Air Force had made several abortive attempts at grasping the UFO problem, if only because the reports coming in, excuse me, if only the reports coming in were convincing it that there was a genuine phenomenon to be investigated. There was the Air Force, and certain sections of the Air Force scorned the project, and but others were in the middle of the way, and they get Operation Project Blue Book going, if only in a kind of.
And Ruppelt's in charge, and most of the reports are civilian or both Foo Fighter reports from pilots from the war, or a mixture?
Well, there were a mixture. And Ruppelt's first task was to try and place this confusing bundle of inquiries and reports and meetings on a proper research basis. That was his achievement. That was his first achievement, because he was the kind of guy to do that kind of thing. You would give him that job. Say, look, here's a mess, and try to put it out on a proper operational basis. He had a staff maximum of about 8, and extremely limited resources.
Okay, you know what? We got to take a break. Let's take a break right here, Colin. Hang on 1 second. We'll be right back. Colin Bennett, author of Flying Saucers Over the White House. We'll be right back to UFO Radio.
Standing by.
Basically, from what I'm gathering in this book, first of all, welcome to the program, Colin.
Glad to be here. Good evening, America.
Yeah, and you join us from London this morning, early in the morning, correct?
No, it's late afternoon here.
Perfect. Amazing book, Flying Saucers Over the White House. We're talking about Colin Bennett, the inside story of Captain Edward Is it Ruppelt, Colin?
Ruppelt. It's Ruppelt, yes.
Ruppelt. His
Yes,
official
ELT.
his official U.S. Air Force investigation of UFOs based.
Following material may not be suitable for all audiences. Please listen responsibly.
My guest tonight is written in. Okay, so we didn't wake you up or anything.
No.
Okay, fantastic. So basically, this is a book that you decided to write. You've been a writer. You've been a playwright. You've studied at Oxford. And then
Yes.
how did you get involved in this Captain Edward Ruppelt?
There are astronauts, and there are ufonauts.
Warning.